Beneath the shadows. The basement of our old, creaking house had always been a place of unease. It wasn't just the darkness that swallowed every corner or the eerie silence that pervaded it. No, it was something deeper, something I couldn't quite put into words. One evening, curiosity and an odd sense of foreboding led me to venture down there. I switched on the dim overhead light, casting long, wavering shadows. The room was a labyrinth of stacked crates, forgotten furniture, and dusty cobwebs. As I made my way deeper, a strange sensation washed over me, like being watched by countless unseen eyes. The air grew heavy, laden with a peculiar mustiness. I tried to shake off the feeling, attributing it to an overactive imagination. But then, from the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement, a fleeting shadow that darted behind a towering stack of boxes. My heart raced as I approached cautiously, my footsteps echoing in the dimness. With trepidation, I reached the boxes and peeked behind them, expecting to find nothing. Instead, my eyes widened in terror as I saw a pair of bloodshot eyes staring back at me from the darkness. In that chilling moment, I realized that whatever lurked in the basement was far from ordinary, and the nightmare had only just begun. The eyes in the darkness stared back at me with a malevolent intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Panic surged through me as I tried to make sense of what I had just witnessed. I retreated from the basement that night, locking the door securely behind me. But sleep eluded me, haunted by those eyes and the palpable sense of malevolence they exuded. The next day, I couldn't resist the urge to return, as though some unseen force was compelling me to unravel the mysteries of that sinister place. With a flashlight clenched in trembling hands, I descended into the depths once more. The basement was just as I had left it, with shadows conspiring in dark corners. As I cautiously explored, I discovered peculiar markings on the walls, ancient symbols etched in faded crimson, their meaning lost to time. The air grew colder, the weight of malevolence increasing with every step. I knew then that I had unleashed something beyond my understanding, something that defied the natural order of things. The basement had become a realm of darkness, a place where the rules of reality no longer applied. The presence that had eluded my senses before was now palpable, a lurking entity that reveled in my fear. I heard whispers, faint and chilling, as though the very walls were taunting me. Shadows moved with a life of their own, and I could feel unseen hands brushing against my skin. In the relentless grip of the malevolent force that had infested the basement, I felt my sanity slipping away, thread by thread. The sinister whispers grew louder, their words incomprehensible, yet filled with a profound dread that shook me to my core. Days turned into weeks as I continued my harrowing exploration of the basement, my life above ground becoming a distant memory. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and I had a sinking realization that they were a gateway to something ancient and unspeakable. The basement's malevolent entity no longer hid in the shadows, but manifested itself as grotesque apparitions that tormented me relentlessly. Faces contorted with agony, voices of the long-forgotten, all clawing at my fragile psyche. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, for the basement's nightmares invaded my every waking moment. I was a prisoner in my own house, my existence reduced to deciphering the cryptic symbols and enduring the torment of the sinister presence. One fateful night, as the malevolent force's grip tightened, I stumbled upon a chamber hidden beneath the basement. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and a dim, ominous light emanated from an ancient, ornate altar at the center of the room. On the altar lay an ancient tome, bound in leather that seemed to pulse with life. The pages were filled with forbidden knowledge, a blasphemous history of the entity that had ensnared me. I realized then that my fate was intricately tied to the basement, and my existence had become a part of the malevolent force's dark plan. As I read the final pages, a chilling certainty settled upon me. I was but a vessel, a conduit for the malevolent entity to extend its influence beyond the basement's confines. The realization filled me with a profound dread, for I knew that my journey into darkness was far from over. And so, as I write these concluding words, a heavy weight presses upon me. I remain in the clutches of the malevolent force, my existence forever intertwined with the sinister entity that lurks below. The knowledge I've gained has granted me a fragile semblance of control, but I know not for how long I will retain it. Each day is a battle to keep the darkness at bay, to resist the insidious influence that threatens to consume me. My future remains uncertain, and I can only hope that someday, somehow, I will break free. The Cellar of Desolation. In our tight-knit group of friends, we often sought adventure in abandoned places. Our latest escapade led us to an ancient house on the outskirts of town, a decaying relic with a notorious history. One chilly evening, our curiosity got the better of us. Armed with flashlights and nerves of steel, we descended into the house's eerie basement. The air was damp and heavy, laden with the scent of decay, as if the very walls exhaled a mournful sigh. As we ventured deeper, the basement's shadows seemed to claw at us, trying to pull us into their inky embrace. The atmosphere weighed on us like a shroud, but we pressed on. Suddenly, we heard a distant, agonized wail, like the anguished cry of a tormented soul. Panic surged through us, and we exchanged anxious glances. Some of us wanted to flee, but curiosity held us in its grip. That's when we stumbled upon an old, ornate door, covered in cobwebs and nearly hidden in the dimness. It seemed to beckon, and despite our fear, we had to know what lay behind it. With trembling hands, we pushed it open and entered a chamber that defied reason. The room was filled with ancient, peculiar machinery, its purpose a macabre mystery. But the most unsettling part was a series of grotesque paintings that adorned the walls. They depicted scenes of suffering and despair, as if the artist had been driven to madness. As we gazed upon those nightmarish images, we sensed a presence, an unseen malevolence that watched us from the shadows. Fear and dread washed over us, and we knew that our adventure had taken a perilous turn. With our hearts pounding and a growing unease in the pit of our stomachs, we realized that we had ventured too deep into the enigmatic cellar of the ancient house. The malevolent presence that lurked in the shadows seemed to intensify with each passing moment, and we knew that escape might not be as simple as retracing our steps. As we continued to examine the disturbing paintings, the room itself seemed to respond to our presence. Shadows danced with unnatural life, and the machinery in the chamber came to life with eerie, discordant sounds. We exchanged frantic whispers, each of us struggling to make sense of the unfolding nightmare. Just then, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air, causing us to jump in terror. It was one of our friends, Emily, who had strayed further into the room. She stood frozen, her eyes locked on one of the paintings, her face contorted in sheer horror. No words escaped her trembling lips. We rushed to her side, attempting to break her trance-like state, but it was as if she were trapped in another world. In desperation, we tore her gaze away from the painting, and her eyes slowly focused on us. She was shaken, unable to explain what had overcome her. As we tried to calm Emily, the room's malevolent energy surged, and the chamber itself seemed to come alive. The machinery whirred and clanked, casting eerie shadows across the walls. We knew that we had to leave, but the door we had entered through had disappeared, replaced by a solid wall of stone. Panic set in as we searched for an escape route, but the cellar had become a labyrinth, its walls shifting and closing in on us. We were trapped, and the malevolent force that dwelled in this cursed place reveled in our terror. With Emily still shaken and the rest of us gripped by fear, we had no choice but to continue our descent into the depths of the cellar, where the true horrors of the ancient house awaited us. Our journey into the depths of the ancient house's cursed cellar had taken an ominous turn. With Emily still shaken by the horrors she had witnessed, and the rest of us gripped by fear, we found ourselves descending further into the heart of darkness. The shifting walls of the cellar seemed to guide us, as if it had a sinister plan of its own. Each corridor we ventured down revealed more twisted secrets, strange symbols etched into the stone walls, candles flickering with an eerie green flame, and grotesque statues that seemed to come to life in our peripheral vision. The malevolent presence that had haunted us all along grew stronger, and we could feel it closing in, tightening its grip on our minds and souls. Whispers echoed in the corridors, beckoning us forward, urging us to discover the cellar's darkest secrets. In our group of friends, we had always been the seekers of adventure, but now, we were the hunted. Every step deeper into the cellar was a step further away from the world we knew, and the line between reality and nightmare blurred. As we ventured deeper, we began to lose track of time. Hunger gnawed at us, and exhaustion threatened to overcome us, but we couldn't stop. We had to find a way out, to escape the clutches of this malevolent force. Then, as we turned a corner, we stumbled upon a chamber unlike any other we had seen. It was filled with mirrors that seemed to stretch into infinity, reflecting our terrified faces 1,000 times over. But the reflections were not exact. They were twisted, contorted, showing versions of ourselves tormented by unspeakable horrors. In the center of the chamber, we saw a figure standing before a colossal mirror, its back turned to us. It was Emily. She had been drawn to the chamber, and now she gazed into the mirror, her reflection trapped in a nightmarish cycle of torment. We called out to her, but she did not respond. It was as if she had become one with the malevolent force that pervaded the cellar, a pawn in its wicked game. As we approached, the figure in the mirror turned slowly, revealing Emily's face contorted in agony. Desperation urged us to rescue her, but the malevolent force that had haunted the cellar had other plans. As we touched the surface of the colossal mirror, our fingers met a cold, solid barrier. It was as if the mirrors were portals to a realm beyond our reach, a nightmarish dimension where time had lost all meaning. Emily's tormented reflection reached out, her hand pressing against the mirror's surface. Her eyes pleaded for salvation, but her voice was lost in a silent scream. We tried to pull her away to break the cycle of despair, but the malevolent force resisted our efforts, its grip unyielding. With every passing moment, the malevolent presence in the cellar seemed to grow stronger, its dark energy pulsating through the mirrors, infecting our minds with visions of our worst fears and regrets. We realized that we were trapped not only physically, but mentally, ensnared in a labyrinth of our own inner demons. Desperation turned to resignation as we understood the futility of our struggle. Some of us had been driven to the brink of madness, and others had become mere shadows of our former selves. The cellar of desolation had claimed us, body and soul. In a final act of desperation, we reached for a nearby mirror, attempting to shatter it and break the malevolent force's hold. But as the glass splintered and cracked, our reflections in the remaining mirrors multiplied, each reflection a fractured version of our tormented souls. As the mirrors shattered around us, the malevolent force roared with an otherworldly fury, and we were consumed by a blinding light. When our vision cleared, we found ourselves back in the basement of the ancient house, as if we had never left. But something had changed. Emily was gone, her fate sealed in the twisted mirrors. The rest of us had returned, scarred by our harrowing journey into the cellar's depths. The malevolent force had allowed us to escape, but not without a cost. As we emerged from the basement, we knew that we were forever changed, marked by the horrors we had witnessed. The malevolent entity had not been defeated. It had merely chosen to release us, its sinister presence still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next unwitting soul to descend into the cellar of desolation. The secrets below. When my family moved into our new house, I was just a curious child, unaware of the mysteries that lay beneath its surface. The old Victorian home had a certain charm, but it also carried an air of foreboding, especially when it came to the basement. My parents were thrilled with our new home, eager to make it our own. My little sister Emma and I explored every nook and cranny with wide-eyed wonder. But as we descended into the basement for the first time, a shiver ran down my spine. The basement was unlike any I had seen before, with walls lined with dusty shelves filled with old books, trinkets, and forgotten relics. Among the odd assortment of items, I noticed an ancient-looking wooden door, its surface adorned with strange symbols etched into the wood. Intrigued, I asked my parents about the door, but they dismissed it as a mere curiosity, something to be left alone. They warned me not to venture too deep into the basement, but their words only fueled my curiosity. One evening, as darkness settled over our new home, I couldn't resist the allure of the mysterious door any longer. I waited until everyone was asleep, then crept down to the basement, my heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. I approached the enigmatic door, my fingers tracing the intricate symbols etched into its surface. With a sense of both fascination and dread, I turned the ancient knob and pushed the door open. To my surprise, it led to a narrow, dimly lit room filled with dusty jars that lined wooden shelves. The jars contained a macabre collection of human organs, eyes, hearts, and other body parts suspended in a thick, amber-like fluid. My breath caught in my throat as I realized the horrifying nature of the discovery before me. Overwhelmed by fear and disgust, I quickly shut the door and fled back to my room, where I lay awake, haunted by the images I had seen. The following morning, I couldn't bear to keep the gruesome secret to myself any longer. I approached my parents, my voice trembling, and recounted my horrifying discovery in the basement. My parents exchanged concerned glances, their faces paling as I spoke. It was my father who decided to investigate first. Armed with a flashlight and a determined expression, he made his way to the basement, leaving my mother and me anxiously waiting at the top of the stairs. Time seemed to stretch as we waited in tense silence. The minutes felt like hours, and the basement's eerie stillness was punctuated only by the faint hum of the furnace. Then, suddenly, we heard my father's voice, a sharp, startled cry that sent chills down our spines. Rushing downstairs, we found my father pale and shaken, his flashlight trembling in his hand. He stammered to describe what he had seen, the dusty jars with human organs, just as I had described them. The room was real, and it was undeniably disturbing. Together, we made the decision to barricade the door leading to that nightmarish chamber. My father fetched a stack of heavy wooden planks and nails, and with a sense of grim determination, we sealed off the room. For a while, it seemed like the right decision. The room and its grim contents remained hidden away, and life in our new home returned to a semblance of normalcy. We convinced ourselves that we had put an end to the disturbing mystery. But some nights later, as we lay in our beds, we began to hear strange noises emanating from the basement, subtle, unsettling sounds that suggested movement and life below, footsteps that should not exist, whispers that defied explanation, and an eerie sensation of being watched. Fear once again settled over our household, casting a long shadow over our peace. And when we mustered the courage to return to the basement, we were met with a horrifying sight. The barricaded door had been mysteriously unsealed, and new jars filled with body parts were added to the macabre collection. As we stood in the basement, paralyzed with fear and disbelief at the sight of the newly added jars with gruesome contents, a sickening realization washed over us. The malevolent presence that had plagued our home was not confined to the basement alone. With trembling hands and racing hearts, we rushed back upstairs, the echoing sounds of our footsteps a cacophony of dread. Panic welled up inside us as we reached the ground floor and heard strange noises coming from the upper levels of the house. A cacophony of crashes and eerie whispers filled the air as we ascended the stairs. Terror gnawed at our resolve as we burst into the kitchen. There, in the dim light, we found Emma frozen in fear. With frantic gestures, Emma pointed to the open kitchen door, which led to the backyard. We rushed to the doorway, our hearts pounding in our chests. In the backyard, bathed in the eerie glow of the moon, we saw a shadowy silhouette of a tall man emerging from the darkness of the woods. He moved with an unsettling grace, his figure partially obscured by the veil of night. He was dragging our mother away from the safety of our home, her cries for help barely audible in the stillness of the night. With a surge of adrenaline, my father and I raced outside, shouting for the intruder to release my mother. But the man continued his relentless advance into the woods, his grip on her unyielding. We followed, struggling to keep up, the woods growing thicker and more sinister with each step. The moonlight played tricks on our senses, casting elongated shadows that seemed to stretch and distort, as if the very forest itself conspired against us. In the dark heart of the woods, my father finally closed the distance between himself and the man. With a desperate lunge, he grabbed a hefty rock from the forest floor and swung it at the intruder. The rock struck the man's head with a sickening thud, and he stumbled, releasing my mother. She collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath and clutching her throat. With my father's help, we managed to free my mother from the man's grasp. But as our attention shifted to her, the man, dazed and disoriented, seized the opportunity to flee. He disappeared into the inky blackness of the woods, leaving us shaken and terrified. As we returned to the safety of our home, we couldn't help but wonder about the horrors that had unfolded in the basement and the malevolent secrets that had brought darkness into our lives. After that harrowing night in the woods, we called the authorities, desperate for answers and safety. The police arrived, and an investigation was launched into the disturbing events that had unfolded in our new home. Yet despite their efforts, the authorities found no trace of the mysterious intruder who had terrorized our family. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the lingering fear that haunted our every step. In the end, the trauma of that night proved too much to bear, and our family made the painful decision to leave our new house behind. We sought refuge in a different place, hoping to escape the malevolent secrets that had taken hold of our lives. But the memories of that house, and the horrors that had transpired within its walls, continued to haunt us. We knew that we could never truly leave behind the chilling mysteries of the past, and they would remain etched in our minds as a reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary homes.